Winding its way through the rolling hills of southern Scotland, the Borders Railway is one of the country's most spectacular routes. But it's not just the scenery that marks this out as something special. It is the best example of a successful campaign to reinstate a rail line axed half a century ago. At Edinburgh's Waverley station, the Borders service is always busy. It's far exceeded all expectations of passenger numbers since reopening 3 years ago.
You might expect 3 years after opening that growth would start to tail off now. It's not. On the Borders Railway, that growth is actually accelerating, which means we're going to have to operate longer trains on this route. And I think there's more growth to come as well.
It's here, 30 miles from Edinburgh in the central Borders, where the railway terminates. If you want to go any further south, you need to take a car, a bus or some other form of transport, but crucially, not the railway. Rail campaigners are now pressing the case for extending the line beyond the central Borders and onto Carlisle, reconnecting struggling towns like Horak. The closure of the railway in the 60s marked a significant decline in Horak's fortunes, with a loss of industry and a fall in population.
And that's a huge new viaduct.
Here, the old track bed is still visible. Local campaigner Marion Short believes it's time politicians started prioritising the regeneration of the rail network.
I think unless you live in a rural area, people don't actually understand about the social isolation and the fact that there is no connectivity between city to city.
Across the UK, many communities were similarly traumatised by what became known as the Beeching cuts. 5,000 miles of track was lost, a third of the network, and more than 2,000 stations axed. But half a century on, grassroots campaigns to reinstate some services are enjoying increasing success. In recent years, 500 miles of new track have been laid and 400 new stations opened, including here at Horak Parkway on the outskirts of Bolton.
We've seen the railways in the past being considered the 19th century's technology, a legacy if you like, but what we're seeing now is a change in that the railways really are being regarded as a strategic part of the nation's future infrastructure and something which has to be invested in.
Back in the Borders, south of Horak, this heritage railway runs on a kilometre of track along the old Waverly Line route. It's a glimpse into the past, but these enthusiasts believe reintroducing passenger services here is easily achievable.
There's no engineering problem that they couldn't get over. There is some major engineering works that would need to be done, and hopefully we could make a really good case for it and get it straight across the border.
Stunning viaducts and railway tunnels would all need substantial work before passenger services could run here again. But campaigners say just a fraction of the funds earmarked for the troubled Crossrail or HS2 projects would help restore rail links to some of the country's most isolated communities. Mark White, Sky News, on the old Waverley Line in the Scottish Borders.